right, so moving on, we have method that may fail to close a database resource, right? So that is once again a very common malpractice that the developers do. So what does it mean? What is a database resource? We have different classes which connect to the database for execution of queries, for establishing connection, and we open these resources, we send the request, we get the results, but we forget to close the resources, right? And what's the problem? First of all, it can be a burden for the server. It wouldn't know whether the application still needs that connection or whether it needs to be closed. And having too many connections which are open may result in denial of service sometimes, right? Or degradation of service at least, right? So let's suppose an application or a database can handle 10,000 simultaneous connections, right? Just taking a random number. And you have an application in which you're opening the connection, but you're not closing that, or you forgot to close that. The application, of course, would work fine, but in terms of performance, eventually it will degrade. You wouldn't feel a difference if there are like only 100 users connected because there are just 100 connections being established, whereas the application can support 10,000 connections, right? But the problem arises when you have, plenty of users connecting to the application, right? So once we have, let's suppose, 10,000 users, and some of the users are not active anymore, but still the connections are active, right? So because you forgot to close the connection, right? So and new users are coming to the application, and they are availing different services. So new connections are being established, but old connections are not being stopped or closed, right? So that is basically what causes this problem, right? So if you see, show scripts bean.java is the file name, and then we have line number 1200. So by the way, once you download this repository that you might have already did, you have to extract the Java files and also see this code, go through this code, right? Just to familiarize with those lines which we are discussing here, right? So moving on, this is the line number. So this is where we are creating a statement class. Statement class is basically responsible to send queries to the database, right? And there's no close statement basically, right? So we are creating the statement, but we are not closing that statement, right? Okay. Okay, this is interesting. So method uses same code for two branches. What is a branch? Branch is basically an if-else condition, right? So if you see, there's exactly same code and if and else blocks of this code, right? So maybe it was just my guess that in one of the cases, the argument was approved. In the other case, it was maybe not approved, but programmer forgot to change that, right? That argument, right? And in both the cases, it's approved, right? That should not have been the case, right? So although this is not, once again, a security vulnerability, but still, static analysis can help us find these issues, right? Because it's looking through all the patterns. So if you find an if-else statement, so see what's the code there in the if block and what's the code there in the else block. If they're exactly the same, flag it as a bug or a problem, right? Which actually is a bug, right? So because if the same argument was supposed to be passed in both the cases, then maybe we don't even need if-else condition. We just need one line which has to be executed in both the cases, right? But once again, this is a logical issue. We cannot decide what developer was trying to achieve, right? So that is why, we cannot conclude whether this is actually a problem or not, right? All right, so moving on, we have another problem, write to the static field from an instance method, right? So we have static fields which are actually common to all the objects of a class, right? So the changes to static variables or static data must be made from the static methods only, right? So if we have static variable, there must be a static method to modify the value of a static variable, right? But in this case, they are using an instance method to change the value of a static variable, which is not a recommended practice. We will discuss more about it maybe during our synchronous session. All right, so we can see here, this is the Boolean variable, and then this is a non-static method which is trying to change the value of the static variable.